So I want to look today at the research that Mr. Matthew Briggs led out of Ohio State that looked at, here's the title, Predictive Factors for Patients' Failure to Show for Initial Outpatient Physical Therapy Evaluation. Now think about what that title tells you, because I think this is really important. Predictive Factors for Patients' Failure. So this research is showing us who, based on some factors, who is most likely to no-show for an initial evaluation at this clinic. And they had some big numbers, okay? I want us to remember something about research. Research tells us things like who and predictive factors, but it doesn't tell us how, per se. And that's the second half of what I want to cover today. Because what's really important when we hear about this, when we look at this research and hear about it, is all it tells us is who. Who didn't show? Cool. So if we jump ahead and go, that's what I figured, and we just move along, then you're actually part of the problem. If we read this and go, that's cool. Now that I know who's not showing up, let me fix that. And let me figure out how we need to change this intake process, which is exactly what they put in their conclusion, which I love. Opportunities for future research may include examining the effects of interventions focused on mitigating factors that were found to increase the odds of a no-show event. I think I know someone who does this stuff, right? More specifically, right? And then they go into some stuff, right? So examination of whether targeted interventions such as notifications and reminders and all these things, right? So they start going into and are fully aware that they didn't tell you how, they just told you who, right? So I want to look at what they showed us, who, and then I want to talk about the how a little bit. So let's start at the beginning, and I want to share some things they shared, Matthew Briggs and teams, about this. We all know access to healthcare is really important, and access is two things. Access is not only payment, but it's actually availability. Because you'll see the biggest number one predictor of a no-show was time from phone call to first visit. So access to care is important. We know that wait times, right? And they go back and say wait times are increasing across America. And they've showed, and they cite some research, it shows wait times are actually increasing in general to see any healthcare providers. Then we know in healthcare, and we know in physical therapy, because it's been in a lot of our journals over the last couple of years, is delayed care, so delayed access, leads to decreased outcomes and increased costs. So this is why understanding who no-shows and how, the next thing, in my part, how we can impact this is really important. Not only to the person we're serving, this person calling and saying, I need your help, but overall, the overall healthcare system, the overall health is impacted by access to care. And that's what this is looking at, right? Why aren't people arriving for care? And that's what this did, right? So remember, they say, and I've got some notes here, they measured the primary factors that predicted the odds of patient attendance for first appointment. Again, who was most likely not to show up? And when you see this title and you read through it, you're going to do what I did. You're going to go, ooh, I know that. I know that answer. I know that answer already. Which is a little scary because I got in my own head and said, leave that shit behind. Let's just read this and see what it says. And unfortunately, it was most of what I believed or already knew. As far as who, not how, right? Not what, but who tends to no-show. If we go into this like that, we're just going to move forward and not try to fix the problem. This is a fixable problem. It is a fixable issue. And thanks to Matthew and team, right? They start to show us that we can measure this, and it actually is something we should consider. Well, I'm sitting here going, cool. I've been considering it for a while. Thank you, Matthew and team, for doing the hard work to show us in the research and in the numbers that it really must be dealt with. It's pretty interesting. They talked about the overall impact, access, delayed care, and everything, and what happens. It's pretty interesting. Two things really jumped out at me that I did not know. Out of all of healthcare, right? Every visit scheduled in healthcare that's been tracked, 30% nationwide are no-showed. That is pure insanity. Here's where it gets worse. You think it can't get worse? PT had the highest percentage of no-shows compared to all other specialties. 57% of all physical therapy visits end up in a no-show. 57%. For every 100 physical therapy visits scheduled today, 57 of those are going to be no-shows. Now, you and I both know we've got a little different situation. People are saying it's not just a one-off. I get it. All that context, I get it. But it's absolutely no excuse. No excuse for 57. No-shows should be as close to zero as any metric possible. Cancels will never be zero. Snow, sick kids, work. Priorities change every fucking day. Cancels, I get it. No-shows, there's zero tolerance for no-shows. It should be as close to zero as possible. And this thing's telling me 57 out of 100 visits today are going to be no-shows. That is people who did not see any value, not only not to show up, but not to contact you. So, by the way, if someone calls me 15 minutes into a visit, 30 minutes into a visit, and tells me what happens, that's a cancel. It's not a no-show. I get it. Understanding of what we're measuring here is important as hell. People who never contact me, or you, right, to say I can't make it today, right, is unacceptable. And that's back on you. You'll love that, right? That's the other thing about this study is people are going to pick this up and go, oh, I knew it, right? It's their fault. It's their fault. I'm like, no, it's your fault. And you're going to see this pretty quick, right? You guys know arrivals have always been a big part about what I do, right? Arrival. And when I say arrive, pay, and stay, when I say arrive, I mean first visit arrival. So this thing, when I saw this pop up, I couldn't get a hold of it fast enough, and I couldn't read through it fast enough. And I love the wording, and I love the work they did because I said, yep, it shows us who. And even in their future research, they talk about the how, right? And that's what I want to talk about today, right? Overall, in their study, the no-show rate was 9.6%, so 10% for first visit no-shows, which again is way too high. Again, it's way too high for multiple reasons. Let's just talk about wasted time, money, and energy for you, the provider. Wasted time, money, and energy for the facility. Wasted, potentially, time, money, and energy for the person on the other end, depending on what they've invested and everything in this. So 10%, I'm just going to round it up, 10% no-show in this study for first visits. Here were the top reasons. Increased time to appointment. Call, scheduled. Scheduled date, not scheduled. Date of call, January 1st, scheduled February 1st, right? I'm just throwing out an example. That was number one. The rest are just in order, but not necessarily 1, 2, 3, 4. Unemployment or unknown status, a Medicaid insurance, and don't default to, I knew that was going to happen because I'm working with a Medicaid clinic currently before this research even came out, to really dive into why people no-show, and I love it, or why they cancel. And then this study came out, and I was like, yep. So again, that's back on us to show some value and prove that there's time, money, and energy worth investing. That's the other thing we don't get, right? When you're talking to someone who wants to schedule, you must help them to understand why they must spend their time, money, and energy with you. And if you want to tell me, well, they have insurance, they don't have to pay anything, you haven't been paying attention. We all pay. They pay premiums, whatever. Yet also, if they're taking time off of work, that's money, right? If there's something else they could be doing, right? So that you must impress upon them and give them some value, my last video, of why they must invest their time, money, and energy with you. Medicaid, I don't care. Zero copay, sure. $300 visit, sure. Everybody gets managed the same. Why must they give us their time, money, and energy and arrive on February 1st at 10:30? That's on us. If we do all that and check all those boxes, your arrival rate will go up. There we go. So there's part of the how, right? And then the other one, which was interesting, was greater than 5 miles to clinic. I was like, holy geez. The only place I've ever seen 5 miles be an issue with anything was in Los Angeles, where 5 miles can be an hour. But my God, 5 miles, right? So again, so we know from this study who's not showing up. Now the question is, how do we get them to show up? How do we get that no-show rate to drop below 10%? How do we get that nation? My God. Because remember, we're talking first visit. And by the way, 10% first visit's too high, because that means they're never coming. So forget the rest of the visit. We got to learn how to decrease the no-show rate for our follow-up visits. I'm like, no, first you got to make sure. That's why it's in this order. They arrive. First visit arrival. So again, this study is eye-opening. It goes deeper. It looks deeper. Yet, if you've been in this field, if you've been in this profession, it shouldn't be a surprise. Surprise, I don't want you to go, so we knew that. I want you to say, so how do we fix that? Because it's interesting, even some of the future stuff is, nothing in here mentions how do we impress upon people what they will get for their time, money, and energy, right? It's about appointment reminders. It's about understanding insurance stuff better. And I'm like, I know lots of people who have been invested in texting software. That doesn't change your arrival rate. And even if it does, it's going to change it by a couple percentage points. I'm talking about an overall impact. Because even if you text somebody to arrive for their first visit, why will they stay? Arrive, pay, stay. First visit arrival is a step in a bigger process. And I'm going to promise you, if I call this, and by the way, I will, I should, yeah, I will, and I have not. If I call this same clinic that they measured, I bet you the barriers to my entry will be fairly significant. Phone trees, voicemails, quick calls, right? The barrier to my arrival will be up. And then not only will the barriers be up, number one, but then number two, they won't give me a reason to arrive. And if this is the first time you're hearing that from me, go back and watch the last 3 or 4 videos. They won't give me a reason to arrive. That's how we're going to fix this. We must start giving people a reason to arrive. Think about that for a second. So I look at this and I go, cool. I mean, someone who won't drive 5 miles to your clinic, again, there'll always be the outliers. I'm talking 80% of the time, right? By the way, I would also argue, if you understand how you can increase the arrival rate, the other way to increase your arrival rate is making sure that people who are on the schedule should be on the schedule. So if I have a conversation with you about what it is you need from us and why you should arrive, and that's not going to work for you, then it is my job to help you find the right place. And that should be an eye-opener for a lot of people. So we both know if some of these people weren't on the schedule, then they wouldn't have no-showed, which means there would have been an availability for someone else who would have showed to be on the schedule. So that's kind of that double whammy. And I'm not saying don't schedule Medicaid people. I'm not saying don't schedule people who are unemployed. I'm saying have that conversation further upstream and not wait and hope and pray at Sunday Mass that everybody's going to show up this week. You're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. So if we know that people outside of 5 miles have a propensity to no-show, if we know that Medicaid people, here's the one common theme. If I ask you, what is the one common factor across all those things? A couple of those you go, oh, it's cost, oh, it's price, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. And I'd say, well, what about the time from first visit? Everybody schedules everybody tomorrow. I'm like, great, you got them to show up for the first visit and then they drop off and no-show. Arrive, pay, stay. So what is the commonality between all these? We got to step back, and I would love to contact all these people and go, what would you have gotten for your time, money, and energy if you arrived? There's a great follow-up study. Find all these people who didn't arrive and ask them, why didn't you arrive? It'll be around 2 things. Actually, it'll all fall under one huge heading. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was going to get. I didn't think it was, because if someone said I didn't think it'd be worth my while, I'd say, why? I mean, as we got deeper, is because they didn't see the value in what they thought they would receive. That's a commonality across all these people. And there will be a small percentage who totally understand it and totally get it. And this is that thing of people who, oh, they've been to PT before. I'm like, yeah, but what was PT? What was it? So this whole mindset, right? Why will they arrive? Sits here 24/7, 365. Has to start regardless. Because by the way, I can't wait till people create checklists out of this to go, well, they're unemployed, or they're more than 5 miles away, or they have Medicaid, or we don't have an appointment, so they're just not going to no-show. Or sorry, they're not going to show. And I'm like, why don't you start your own study in your own practice? Start managing these calls differently. Start making sure that people understand why they should arrive. Desired outcomes, expectations, seeing an expert for them and their condition. Get or their benefits beforehand. And then watch the no-show rate go up. And at the same time that you do that, you're also going to help people make decisions about, you know what, Jerry, this isn't going to work for me. And I say, why not? And they tell me, and I say, great, I get it. I appreciate you sharing this with me. Let me help you find the right. So the outcome is best for everybody. Someone who says this isn't going to work and you help them find the right place, that's a fucking win for that patient, for you, for healthcare. That's not difficult to figure out. If your front desk is trained, by the way, these are not longer phone conversations. These are not difficult phone conversations. You'll all come up with reasons why you can't do this. And I'll go, you can't do this? But we got research that shows 10% of these people don't show up, which costs you time, money, and energy, which meant you didn't have someone on the schedule who would arrive, pay, and stay. It's just it's a cycle that goes around. I can't afford not to do this. It's like, so you're just and I'm going through this with someone currently. No matter what, they just insist on putting everybody on the schedule and then allowing them to show up and then leave or no show. I'm like, man, what a churn and burn. And guess what's happening to their culture? Burnout. And their turnover's high. You'll burn out your whole staff with this approach. So you can't afford not to fix it further upstream. You can't afford not to have a conversation with people to understand and help them understand why they should arrive. And the research proves it. 57% of all PT visits are no-shows. That is pure insanity. I'm going to have a nightmare tonight around that number. And I'm not talking from the business side. I'm talking from wasting people's time, money, and energy. And that we all go into this and nod and add more services and sell ourselves and add more initials behind our name. I mean, for a profession that has so many initials and prides itself on so much shit, 57% no-show rate is the biggest tell of anything. That is pure insanity. So again, the research tells us who is not arriving, which we must know, because then we can build better systems upstream to help people understand why they should arrive. And really, the system you set up for why they should arrive gets done for everybody regardless. So for all the people who don't meet the criteria, you need to manage those phone calls the same exact way you manage everybody. And that's how you systematize this, right? Remember, it's about the process. You control the process, not the outcome, which is, again, right? Go back a few videos. Did a whole series on this. So the outcome, oh, we got to change no-shows. Oh, we got to change cancels. I'm like, no, you don't. You got to change your process. Because the only way to change the outcome is to better understand the process. So first things first, who's not showing up, okay? But we don't build a system for the 10%. We build a system that gets done 100% of the time so we can get that number as low as possible. We got to understand who's not showing up. We got to understand who's showing up. We got to look for the similarities, and the similarities are hidden a lot of times, right? What's the similarity, again, between unemployed, Medicare, greater than 5 miles away, and from call to schedule time? There are none. I'm like, yeah, there are. None of them knew their value. None of them knew what to expect. It's a crapshoot. And by the way, we just keep cramming people in the top of the funnel. That's why people hate no-shows, because they couldn't call someone on their wait list. I'm like, not a good reason to address a no-show problem. So I'm delaying care for these people on the wait list because I don't know how to manage all these people that are scheduled. That's going back, that's going upstream, that's understanding your business as an ecosystem. Why will they arrive? By the way, if you get your no-show rate down to 3%, your cancel rate down to 5%, then at least when you look at your schedule, you know those people are arriving. Then when your wait list starts to grow, you know your business is growing. But if you use a wait list to fill in your no-shows and cancels, again, not a good way to run a business. Burnout, you're going to churn your staff. Not a good way to run a business. Arrive, pay, and stay. And it starts at the beginning. I tell people all the time, the single worst phone call, the single worst call I can pick up, if I asked everybody to tell me, everybody'd say, oh, the phone call that starts, do you take my insurance? Are you in network? What's my cost? I'd say, nope, that's easy enough. I prefer they tell me that objection right off the bat. The single worst phone call to take is I need to get scheduled for physical therapy, because then that lulls everybody into this false sense of they know what they are going to get. I'm going to put them on the schedule, and then that leads to our 57% no-show. That leads to our 10% no-show at the beginning. Think about that for a second. I need to schedule physical therapy. Great, let's get you on the schedule. And then you just click your boxes and you go through it. And then I say, why will they arrive? Well, they wanted physical therapy. And I say, what's physical therapy to them? And there's dead air. We get lulled into a false sense of security when someone calls and says, I want to get scheduled for physical therapy. Everybody hates the insurance one because they don't want to have that conversation. I said, yeah, because now you got to do some work and see what the fuck they want from you. Think about that. This all fits. You can decrease no-shows. This study, we turn around tomorrow. I've already reached out to some people. I'm like, let's stay in your system. Let's change the script in your system. We have all the numbers. Let's prove it. Let's increase first visit arrival. We'll make one change. There will be no technology. If you start investing in technology before you understand all of this, send me the money and don't waste your time. If you are building systems for arrival, if you are building systems for decreasing cancels and you don't understand your patient's journey, send me the money. You can't build a system in for arrivals if you don't understand the patient's journey, right? You guys all know that. You knew it was going to come to that. All this stuff just bundles all up, right? That's why I love this. And it all comes from understanding the ways for arrive, pay, and stay, right? So thanks again to the team at Ohio State, Mr. Matthew Briggs, for showing us all this data and getting us to start to question and understand, yes, we all know there's a problem. They put it all together on one nice paper, man, right? And now we got to look at how to change this. And I'm going to challenge all of you to go back and read in the context of what is this patient's life cycle? What do they want from us? Why will they arrive?